the Uí Ímair, one of the greatest dynasties of the Viking Age. Their considerable economic and political influence was the envy of many. They were a Norse-scale dynasty that created not so much a single kingdom, but a loose polity of trading strongholds ruled by a common dynasty. They would rule over much of the Irish Sea region, the Kingdom of Dublin, the western coast of Scotland, including the Hebrides, and some parts of northern England from the mid-9th century. They would change the political landscape of the region for centuries. The dynasty was the precursor of a number of families in Ireland, both Gaelic and Norse speaking. Some historians believe Imair and Ivar the Boneless to be identical, others claim they are two different individuals. According to the Irish annals, Imair was the son of Gofraid, who was the king of Lochlan. The problem with this title is that Lochlan may have meant Norway or the Norse-controlled areas of Scotland. Regardless, this source does put doubts on him being Ivar the Boneless, who is thought to have been Danish. I have talked about this debate on the Irish Medieval History channel, so please check it out. Imair is first mentioned in contemporary Irish annals in 857, 4 years after Olaf Konung, his suspected brother, is recorded as arriving in Ireland. They are recorded as fighting against Maelsechnaill I. He was called King of all Ireland. The brothers may also be related to an earlier Viking, Tomrare, who would be associated with the Ring of Tomar, an object that was looted from Dublin in 994, along with the Sword of Carlos. These objects appear to have formed part of the royal insignia of Dublin. Early battles against the Irish king and his Norse allies seem to have gone in favour of the co-kings of Dublin, although they would soon find themselves being pushed back. Olaf would marry into the Uí Néill in the north, and with this alliance they would join forces, as the northern and southern Uí Néill were frequent competitors for the supremacy in Ireland. Imair and Olaf were soon joined by another brother, Ursel. As the brothers established themselves in Ireland, they would find themselves absorbed into the dynastic struggles of their neighbours, where hostage taking and raiding cattle to dominate local clans, or killing chiefs and kings to expand their dominance of the surrounding areas, were all seen as legitimate diplomacy tools. Although Dublin was the de facto capital of this kingdom, Ireland's riches wasn't the only prize on offer, and around 864 the three brothers halted their campaigns in Ireland. They would instead start campaigning in Scotland and England, with Imair leaving in 864, possibly to lead his men within the great heathen army. Olaf and his brother leaving in 866 at the head of a large army to attack Pictland, taking away many hostages and slaves. Although in the brothers' absence, a number of long forts along the northern coast were destroyed by the Uí Néill, Olaf's army was forced to return in 867 due to the loss of several battles by the Norse armies left in Ireland, and the destruction of more settlements, including Cork. He appeared with the hope of stopping the loss of any more of his hard-earned gains. This campaign to regain control would come at a cost, and Olaf's son Carlos would be killed in battle. Inter-clan and faction feuds between the Norse settlers were just as common as that of their Irish counterparts. Olaf is said to have killed his brother Ursel in one such event. By 870, the political landscape seems to have been secure enough for Imair and Olaf to leave and go raiding outside of Ireland once again. They laid siege to Dumbarton Rock, the chief fortress of the Kingdom of Strathclyde, and captured it following a 4-month siege. The pair are said to have returned to Dublin in 871 with 200 ships, and they brought with them in captivity a great prey of Angles, Britons and Picts to sell in Dublin's great slave market. The final mention of Imair in contemporary annals is in 873, when his death is reported. He is titled as King of the Norsemen of all Ireland and Britain. As for Olaf, according to the Pictish Chronicle, He died in around 874 during a campaign against Constantine I in Scotland. The brothers had left vast territorial gains for the few descendants that remained to rule. The family were now closely linked with their Irish and Norse neighbours around Dublin, taking the Irish laws and customs as their own, many of which would have seemed familiar to them, such as fosterage, which was used in Ireland as a means of strengthening ties between different ruling families, and was a viable way to integrate the family with the Irish political elite and gain important alliances against external and internal threats. These proved vital very quickly as the dynastic struggles for the throne began, nephew against uncle, cousin against cousin, and other strong political rivals putting their name in the hat. The neighbouring Irish kings sought to take advantage of this to increase their own influence and to hopefully expel this threat from their shores. In 902, the kingdoms of Brega and Leinster formed an alliance and drove the Viking ruling elite from Dublin. Those that survived the capture of the city split into different groups. Some went to France, some to England, and some to Wales. For the rest of the Norse and Gaelic population in Dublin, life would continue. But considering Dublin was on the verge of establishing its own mint by 902, and that they wouldn't actually achieve this until the 990s, shows the impact this attack had on the trading hub. The exiled leaders and their retinues, led by Uí Ímair, retreated to the territory in Scotland, over which they exerted some control, only to have Constantine II, King of Alba, pursue an aggressive campaign against these Norsemen. Those that followed Sitric the Gael went to England, going on to rule territory in the eastern Danelaw. Those that followed Ragnall settled in the Isle of Man, with Ragnall becoming the King of Man. This did not stop their raiding of the lands in Ireland, and in 914 they would regain a stronghold in Waterford. They did not return to Dublin until 917, when the grandsons of Imair landed forces in Ireland and inflicted decisive defeats on the armies of Irish kings, including at the Battle of Confey. The Uí Ímair would face continued pressure from all sides while trying to maintain their control over new and old lands. Ragnall and his kinsman Gottfried had left Ireland with a force to regain Jorvik and the Kingdom of Northumbria, which had fallen into Anglo-Saxon rule. They would succeed, but only hold it for a short time. This was seen as the perfect time to attack by the Uí Néill, and they formed an Irish coalition of 5 kings to try and oust the Hiberno Norse ruler of Dublin. What happened next was a massacre of the Gaels at the Battle of Island Bridge. The 920s and 930s are regarded as the height of Norse power in Ireland, and only Limerick rivaled Dublin during this time. By 937, Olaf, great-grandson of Imair, succeeded in establishing dominance over the Vikings of Limerick. That same year, he allied with Constantine II of Scotland by marrying Constantine's daughter to his son. He would also ally with King Owen of Strathclyde in an attempt to reclaim the Kingdom of Northumbria. This followed what had been an unchallenged invasion of Scotland by Aethelstan, King of the English, in 934. It had been proven Aethelstan could only be defeated by these kingdoms if they combined their forces, although even this has proven to be anything but a certain outcome. As at the Battle of Brenambra, the alliance of Scots, Norse Gael and Cumbrians was smashed, described by the Annals of Ulster as a great, lamentable and horrible battle. Aethelstan died in October 939, and very soon afterwards Olaf left for York yet again, where he was able to quickly establish himself as King of Northumbria. He would meet with the new king, Edmund, at Leicester in 939, and they came to agreement on dividing England between the two of them. The peace was short-lived, however, and within a few years of the agreement, it was in tatters. The Uí Ímair were expelled from England, while struggling to keep Dublin, as in 944, Dublin was sacked by the High King of Ireland, Congala. Much of this was due to internal feuding within the family. The Limerick branch would also suffer. Ivar Uí Ímair king of Limerick, would be the last Norse king of the city. He famously led his forces at the Battle of Sulcoit in 968 against the Dalcash, whose leaders were none other than Mahan MacCannatig and his younger brother Brian Boru. Dublin would fall to another High King, Mael Shocknall II, in 980, the stepson of the ruling Olaf Uí Ímair. This once small Viking longfort had grown into a large Norse-scale trading hub, trading in slaves, horses, ships, gold, silver and clothing, from Ireland to the Middle East and even further. Its wealth was a great benefit and hindrance to the Uí Ímair. As they became rich, they also became a target. Sigtrygg Silkbeard was defeated by Brian Boru in 999 at the Battle of Glenmama. He would marry one of Brian's daughters, and although he joined Brian's army in their victorious campaign in Ulster, subjugating the Ullid, Neil and Kilcolm, he would also join the rebellion in Leinster against Brian, culminating in the Battle of Clontarf in 1014. He was, however, allowed to keep Dublin following his defeat, and before long he was back to raiding church lands, joining Irish lords on raids and challenging his kin in Waterford. Although he also had time to take a pilgrimage to Rome in between all these activities. By the 1030s he was finally back in a strong position, setting up a Dublin colony in Gwynedd, Wales, and defeating a coalition of Irish kings from Ulster at the Battle of Inverboyne. His son would become the ruler of Dublin, Man, Galloway, Lorenz, Anglesey and Gwynedd. They were succeeded by a kinsman Afferty. Although he bore a Gaelic name, the name of his father is ultimately derived from Old Norse, a fact that serves to exemplify the hybrid nature of the 11th century Irish Sea region. In 1031 he was one of 3 kings in northern Britain who submitted to Canute Svensson, ruler of what's been termed as the Anglo-Scandinavian Empire. In 1052, after losing Dublin for the final time, he appears to have seated himself on the Isle of Man. In 1061, about a decade after his final defeat in Dublin, Afferty appears to have been expelled from the Isles, and may have then fallen back into Galloway before leaving for Rome, where he would die. The Uí Ímair dynasty would fade into obscurity. The lands held by the family were either absorbed into other kingdoms, and the smaller branches of the family who would continue to dwell within their old kingdom would become political pawns to help legitimise larger kingdoms' right to rule over those lands. With the exception of the Crovan dynasty, a cadet branch that managed to revive much of the family's power. But this is for another video. If you'd like to learn more of your family's histories, please like and subscribe, or to support the channel further, please check out the Patreon and merch store links below. Thank you.